The rain hit the concrete like it was trying to erase something. I stood under the flickering neon sign of an old freight elevator, the rooftop mixer above humming with jazz and forced laughter. My palms were cold. Not from nerves, I've learned to live with those, but from anticipation. Tonight wasn't about cocktails or networking. It was about reckoning. "My name is Elizabeth Stewart," I whispered into the darkness, as if saying it aloud would make it sting less, and last week my sister laughed in my face. Again. She always laughs. Barbara, queen of the polished resume and perfect timing, never misses an opportunity to remind me I'm the family fluke. At dinner, over a candlelit table and overpriced wine, she leaned in with a grin and said, "Dell's probably monetizing couch cushions now." Everyone chuckled. Forks paused in midair. I didn't. I watched her sip her Merlot like it was blood. She's always been like that, Barbara, in her navy blazers and gold-plated LinkedIn endorsements. She's built for boardrooms and brand deals. Me? I walked away from cubicles years ago, built something raw and real from my living room, and she never cared enough to ask. To her, I'm still the sister who does internet stuff. A glorified hobbyist. A ghost in elastic waistbands. I let her think it. Let them all think it. But something shifted the night she dragged me out of condescension disguised as kindness to her firm's rooftop mixer. She called it good exposure for me. I didn't bother correcting her. Just nodded, like a grateful stray invited inside for scraps. Then it happened. Her manager, yes, the manager, the one she's practically bled for, walked up to me. Not Barbara. Me. Danny Stewart? His voice cut through the room like glass. Founder of Ashhold Digital, right? I've been following your work. Are you still hiring? Barbara was 2 feet away, caught mid-sip. Her hand froze. For the first time in our lives, she didn't say a word. You'd think that would be enough. It wasn't. Barbara has always been the Golden One regional PR lead by 28, keynote speaker at 29. Her career sparkles like champagne, loud and hollow. Me? I burned out in silence. I remember the day I quit, fluorescent lights humming, the scent of stale ambition, my body slumped in a desk chair as I stared at a pitch for a soda brand I wouldn't drink if I were dying of thirst. This can't be it, I thought. This can't be me. So I walked out. No dramatic exits. Just a tie order, a 3-day nap, and then silence. The kind that didn't feel like failure. It felt like breathing. I started small. Bio rewrites. Ghostwriting captions. Auditing broken brands, trying to fake relevance. No titles. No boardroom gloss. But my brain felt alive again, like I was stitching meaning into things no one else noticed. Real people. Real pain points. Real clarity. And somewhere along the way, it stopped being freelancing. Ashhold Digital became a machine, lean, fast, and quietly powerful. I didn't need applause. I needed oxygen. And I finally had it. But not to Barbara. To her, it was still just Dell's little side hustle. She never asked how many contracts I closed last quarter. Never asked how many creatives I employed or how often our decks ended up on desks she'd killed to pitch. At dinner last month, she told the waiter I sold good vibes from my couch. I smiled, tipped heavily, and changed the subject. Let her have the punchline. She wasn't worth the rebuttal. Because here's what no one sees. I don't want Barbara's respect anymore. I want her silence. I want her to stop branding me with assumptions and pretending it's concern. Even Mom, sweet, soft-spoken, once called my work a transitional phase and offered to connect me with her friend's husband. I thanked her. Didn't mention that her friend's husband had applied to me for a digital overhaul last quarter. Funny, right? No one in that family knew how deeply I'd embedded myself in circles they couldn't pronounce. The quiet powerhouses, the shadow agencies, the brands that didn't shout but whispered and made millions. So when Barbara called that Monday and casually invited me to her firm's rooftop mixer, not a big thing, just might be good for you to get out, I nearly laughed. She made it sound like charity. But I asked for the guest list anyway, and there they were. Names I'd ghost consulted for. CMO inboxes I'd ghost written pitches into. Anonymous subscribers to my framework brief. I said yes. She didn't need to know why. Let her think I was there for the free drinks and rooftop views. She had no idea I was walking into that crowd with more leverage than she'd ever held. The venue was one of those rustic chic setups, exposed steel beams, Edison bulbs, jazz looping from a Bluetooth speaker. Everyone wore business casual-like armor. Barbara, of course, looked like she'd stepped off the cover of a startup mag sleek bun. Jawline sharp enough to cut glass. Heels that screamed future executive. When she introduced me, she didn't even flinch. This is my sister, Dell. She does digital stuff. Digital stuff. I smiled, shook hands, and said nothing. But inside, I was wildfire waiting for wind. I didn't need to defend myself. Not anymore. I'd stopped playing the version of me she needed to believe in. The truth had already spoken, it didn't require my voice. I moved through the room like smoke, easy, unobtrusive. Made small talk at the bar. Nodded politely at a couple of junior associates who clearly thought I was someone's plus one. And then I saw him. Michael Morgan. He didn't walk in like he owned the place. He didn't have to. The air adjusted to him. And Barbara straightened. Barely perceptible. But I caught it. That instinctive shift, like prey sensing the presence of something that could end everything or make it gold. She didn't notice he was heading our way until he was right beside us, drink in hand, eyes unreadable. Danny Stewart. My name cut through the noise. Barbara tensed beside me. Just a flicker, but enough. Her fingers tightened around her glass. He held out his hand. I've followed your work, especially the ethical scaling model you published last fall. Impressive thinking. I had no idea you were local. She blinked at him. At me. At us. I am, I said. But my team's remote. We're split mostly between LA and Seattle. He nodded, pleased. Are you expanding? We've been struggling to build a lean model with half the clarity of yours. What you're doing, honestly, it's cleaner than anything we've prototyped. I let myself smile. A quiet, deliberate thing. We're expanding. Carefully. And just like that, he drifted off into another conversation. Barbara stood still for a beat, staring after him. Then turned slowly toward me. You know Michael? No, I said. He knows me. She stared like I'd shape-shifted in front of her. Like she was trying to recognize a face she should have known and somehow never did. She laughed. A short, hollow breath. Why didn't you ever tell me about any of this? I didn't look at her. I just shrugged. You never asked. That landed. Her gaze dropped, eyes fixed on the rim of her drink. She didn't say anything for a while. I almost felt something. Not sympathy, more like curiosity. Was this the first time she'd actually seen me? Not the joke version. Not the couch-based side hustler she liked to parade as contrast. The real me. But then I remembered, all the dinners, all the backhanded comments. The way she used me as comedic relief for relatives who didn't know better. Her polished cruelty masked as sibling banter. I wasn't angry. I had outgrown that. Anger burns hot. I was cold now. Colder than she knew how to handle. We lingered another hour. I spoke to a strategist from Berlin who wanted to partner on a campaign. A woman from a design firm handed me her card with a wink. Barbara stayed close to the wall, watching conversations like someone who'd forgotten how to enter them. She slipped out early. When I finally left, the night air hit like a baptism. Crisp. Clarifying. I was halfway down the block when a young guy from her firm jogged after me, eyes wide. Hey, are you Stuart? From Ashfold Digital. That's me. He held up his phone. Do you have a contact link or something? My cousin's launching a brand and she could really use someone who, actually knows what they're doing. I scanned my code into his phone. Tell her I said good luck. Then I kept walking. No fire in my chest. No surge of pride. Just peace. Like an old rope had finally snapped loose from around my ribs. I didn't need Barbara's validation. I didn't need her to acknowledge how wrong she'd been. I just needed her to stop treating me like a joke. She went silent for 3 days. No texts. No thinly veiled reels on Instagram. Just a strange, echoing absence. Fine by me. I hadn't been waiting for flowers. Or guilt. Or grand gestures. But I could feel something had cracked, subtle but real. She wasn't mad. She was off balance. And for someone like Barbara, that's far worse. On day 4, her message came. Can we talk? Just us. I let it sit. An hour passed. Then I answered. Meet me at Turn and Company 9th Street. 2 p.m. She was barely on time. Not late, but not early either. She looked softer. Frayed. Her blazer was creased at the elbow, and she wore flats, an unspoken surrender. We sat at a scratched wooden table near the back. Rain tapped the windows. She stirred her coffee like she was afraid of what she might say. I didn't realize, she murmured. I leaned back. Didn't realize what? The scope. What you've built. How far it goes. I nodded once. You never asked. She winced. She'd heard that line before. This time, it sliced deeper. I didn't mean to make you feel small. I looked at her. No, I said evenly. You meant to make me feel smaller than you. That's not fair. It's honest. Her mouth opened, then closed. She sat there, wrecked by something she couldn't reverse. Finally, I think I envied you. I raised an eyebrow. Why? You got out, she said, voice low. You left the structure, and you still made something. I stayed in it. I ran every race. And now I don't even know what I'm racing toward. She paused. Then, I thought I was ahead. Until that night. I let the silence do its work. She needed to sit with that. I resented you, she said. You never needed the spotlight. You just kept going. And I. She trailed off. I need to be seen. You always have been, I said. But never understood, she whispered. That stopped me. I thought of all the conversations we never had. The way our parents lit up over her promotions, her media quotes, her headlines. I thought of me, the background blur in family photos. She looked up. I'm sorry, Del. This time, it wasn't rehearsed. It came from somewhere bruised and vulnerable. I believe you, I said. But I'm not here for an apology. I'm not angry anymore. She blinked. You're not. I shook my head. I'm something else. No, I said, quiet but certain. I was angry once, years back. But that burned out when I realized something simple. Your opinion never had the power to change my reality. Ashfold didn't rise from spite. It came from wanting to build something that mattered to me. And I did. She nodded, slower than usual. So, you're good? Happy? I'm grounded, I said. And that's more than enough. Her lips lifted faint, unsure. Maybe I could learn how to get there. I leaned back in my chair. Maybe. But that's your road. Not mine to pave. The silence that followed wasn't tense anymore. It didn't stretch awkwardly across the table like it used to. It just was. Quiet and still. Like we'd finally arrived at some kind of middle ground neither of us had ever trusted could exist. There was no winner here. No scoreboard. Only space. She looked over at me before we stood to leave. If someone from my department wanted to talk about consulting, would you take the meeting? I let the question sit for a second. Depends, I said. On how they approach it. She smiled, a real one this time. No layers. No show. And when I walked out into the early evening light, I felt a strange sort of clarity settle in. Not satisfaction. Not vindication. Just relief. Just release. Not because Barbara had changed, but because I didn't need her to anymore. A few days later, I got an email. Subject line, let's connect. Internal strategy discussion. Monroe. Direct, unfussy, sincere. He laid out some ongoing problems his team had been hitting their heads against for months. We've been studying the Ashfold model, he wrote. I believe there's room for alignment. I read it twice. Then I let it sit untouched for most of the afternoon, not because I doubted the opportunity, but because I wanted to answer with the right intent. This wasn't about Barbara. It couldn't be. That wasn't why I did any of this. So when I responded, I did so with measured curiosity and no urgency to impress. We scheduled a video call for the following morning. It was smooth from the start. Monroe was focused, respectful, and fully prepared. No posturing. No surprise that I was qualified. About halfway through, he said, "Honestly, Elizabeth, what your team is pulling off with minimal overhead is what we've been trying to do, with triple the spend and half the clarity." I smiled. We keep things lean. And we keep them human. It tends to work. He nodded, thoughtful. We could use more of that. We outlined deliverables. Discussed timelines. I named my rate without hesitation. He didn't blink. By Friday, the contract was in my inbox. Signed. I didn't loop Barbara in. Not because I was hiding anything, but because, for the first time, it didn't feel like part of her story. It was mine. Eventually, she saw the announcement in the internal threads. "You're consulting with us?" "Yes." Monroe and I had a good call. "Project starts next quarter." There was a long pause before her reply appeared. "I'm proud of you. For real." I read it. Once. Then again. Then I put the phone down and walked away. A year ago, that message would have meant everything. Now, it was kind, but no longer necessary. I wasn't looking for her to rewrite the past. I had already chosen my future and started living it without waiting for her approval. That weekend, I took my team out to dinner. Nothing flashy. Just 6 of us squeezed into a corner booth at a dimly lit bistro, plates passed between us, laughter filling the gaps. We weren't making headlines. We weren't building unicorn startups. But we were building something real. After the check was paid, Jessica, our lead designer, raised her glass. "To Elizabeth," she said. "For creating a company people don't want to escape from." Glasses clinked. I didn't give a speech. Just nodded, quiet, full. Because I knew what I'd built. And more importantly, I knew who I'd become while building it. There was no more shrinking. No more explaining. No more waiting for someone to get it. The day I left that job all those years ago, I stopped asking for permission. Now I say my rates without blinking. I walk into rooms without justifying my seat. And when someone asks if I'm hiring, it's not surprise in their voice anymore. It's respect. People think success is about being the loudest in the room. The promotion. The headline. The moment your doubters fall silent. But that's not what lasts. Real success is quiet. It's consistent. It doesn't need applause. It's the kind that doesn't shake when no one's watching. I didn't build Ashfold to prove anyone wrong. I built it because I stopped fitting into spaces that weren't made for me. Because I stopped folding in on myself just to make others comfortable. I didn't need praise. I needed freedom. Barbara and I still talk. It's different now, fewer performances. More pauses. More honesty. She asks real questions. And when I answer, I do it without needing to be validated. That, to me, is everything. I used to imagine there'd be this one cathartic moment where it would all click, the apology, the confession, the reckoning. But there wasn't. There was just me, deciding to stop waiting. And once I saw myself clearly, I didn't need anyone else to. Now I move with ease. I lead with clarity. I speak with no fear of being misunderstood. And by the time people finally stop underestimating me, I'll already be somewhere they never expected to find me.